Okay, so this is the third video that we've done with our virtual ASAs, and in this one we're going to make a copy of our original virtual ASA that we created. Now that's already up and running, and I've added in the extra interfaces on my virtual machine here for the second ASA. See, I've given them a sensible name so that they're going to match the interfaces that are going to be on the ASA itself. Okay, as I've said, we've already got one set up and deployed, so we're going to make a copy of the files that we already have. Now, one of the files that we need to make a copy of is a hidden file, so we're going to need to turn on show hidden files and folders in our folder view. Yep, apply. The first thing we're going to need to take a copy of is flash 1, which is the flash memory for the virtual firewall we've already got deployed. This will take a couple of minutes, but through the magic of video we can speed that up. Now we're simply going to rename the copy that we've made to flash 2. Okay, the next one that we're going to need to do is the ASA nolinear.gz. Again, just copy and paste it and then rename it. Just simply put a 2 on the end. And the VM Linux, which is the Linux kernel that the virtual ASA is going to use. Once again, just rename this one and put a 2 on the end. Okay, now the batch file that kicks everything off, we're going to need to take a copy of that to do the same job for the second firewall. This is the one that takes all the configuring, which unfortunately we're going to have to do again for the second firewall. Okay, just like before, we're going to edit this file, and there we have the big log command that kicks everything off. Now remember, this is a copy of the running ASA firewall that we've already got, so we're going to need to change all the hardware IDs so that they match the new ones. Same as before, we're going to run the network device list batch file, and after a couple of seconds that will list all the hardware, NICs and addresses on the machine. One thing I have found is sometimes you can add some new network interfaces and they don't show up in here until you reboot. But there's the ones for our ASA. That's the inside interface and the one that we're going to use for failover. So starting with the outside one, we take a copy of the hardware ID. And same as we did before, we're going to scoot along here until we get to the first hardware ID and replace it with the one we've just copied. And paste it back in. Just take that double bracket out. scoot along to the next one. There it is. Okay, that's the hardware ID for the inside interface, so that's the one we're going to need to copy next. So it'll be ASA 2 EO1 inside. Paste that one in. And lastly, the hardware ID for the interface that we're going to use for failover. Switch back. So an ASA 2 EO2 failover interface for the last one. Oops. I'll get there in the end. And paste that in there. Finish with that, I don't need that anymore. Okay, I'm going to change the telnet port, because at the minute this one's on 1234, which our existing ASA is. So I'm going to change that to 4567. If we scoot all the way back to the beginning again, I'm going to change it up. You don't need to change it up here, this is purely cosmetic. But change that to 4567 as well. Now there's some other information that needs to be changed. Okay, remember this one's going to use flash 2, so that needs to be changed. We're using a different Linux kernel that we copied, so this one needs to end in 2 as well. The no linear GZ file also needs renaming. Now remember, this is a copy and paste of the original ASA, and as such has all the MAC addresses in it. And as both these ASAs are going to sit side by side at layer 2 on the OSI model, the MAC addresses can't match, so they need to be changed. Otherwise they won't be able to talk to each other. So I'm going to change the second one, there's 3 to 2. Okay, and save. Close that down. Right, just as before, I'm going to pop a shortcut to that on my desktop. And so we don't get confused, because I'm easily confused. That's the startup file for ASA 1, and that'll be the startup file for ASA 2. Okay, launch ASA number 2. Again, the 4567 is the port to telnet onto to get to the second one. That's it up and running. So, I'm going to open a command window, start run CMD, And to talk to the second ASA, I'm going to telnet to localhost 14567. Hit return a couple of times and use the same commands we used before to bring up the second ASA. Mod Pro B100, then ifconfig 8080 up, ETH1 up, and ETH2 up. cd/mnt/disk0, and /linear_monitor. And providing we've changed everything correctly and it matches, after a couple of seconds, up comes our second ASA. There we go. Remember, it's called itself VASA1 because it's a perfect copy of our original ASA, and it has the same IP addresses, so those will need to be changed. Let's change the outside IP address first. All standard Cisco stuff. (24-bit mask). And change the IP address of the inside interface, Ethernet 0/1. Exit out of there. I'm just going to save the running config. Yes, confirm. Let's just minimize that. Now, same as we did before, the last thing we're going to need to do is to configure the IP addresses on the actual interfaces on the host machine. Do the outside one first. Remember, these have to be different to the ones that are already in use on the ASA so they don't conflict. So you're going to need quite a lot of spare IP addresses to make this work. Sorry guys. (24-bit mask). Now the inside interface. Okay. Well, the host machine has a pause, and last but not least, the failover interface. Obviously all these subnets have to match the one on the primary ASA. for it to have its Windows XP pregnant pause. Right, from now on, all the configuration of both the virtual ASAs is exactly the same as if they were physical ASAs. So I'm going to jump to the host that I've got inside. I've got 2 saved Telnet sessions to point to the ASAs. I'm going to configure the first one. And go to enable mode. Go to configure terminal mode. And we're going to set the IP address for the outside interface, but we're also going to give it a standby IP address. So the primary IP is going to be .199, 24-bit mask, and its standby IP address is going to be 197. And I'll have a good think about it for a few seconds. Exit out there, and again we're going to need to put a standby IP address on the inside interface. So the primary IP is going to be 192.168.254.254, again with a 24-bit mask. A standby IP address of that's going to be 192.168.254.252. And again it'll have a good pause. Okay, exit out of that. And we'll configure failover. We've got LAN-based failover, and we're going to call the interface failover, and we're going to use Ethernet 02 as our failover interface. Okay, that clears anything that's already in there and preps it. Now we're going to need IP address for our failover. 172.16.1.1, again with a 24-bit mask, and its standby IP address is going to be 172.16.1.3. Let's set up a shared key. In this case, it's going to be 666.999. I'm going to set this firewall as the primary firewall. Remember, in active standby you can have a primary and a secondary, and there will always be primary or secondary, whether they're running or not. Okay. I set the failover link so I get stateful failover as well. and then I'm going to enable failover. Now that's going to sit and it's going to wait for the second one. So let's open a connection to the second firewall. Okay, and what I want to do here is just shift the primary one to the back, just so you can see it in the background there. So while I configure the second one, hopefully we'll see the response from the first one when we turn failover on. Okay, again we've got to configure terminal mode. There's a hell of a lot less to do on the second firewall because obviously it's going to take its configuration from the primary. Same as before, we're going to turn on failover, LAN-based failover. We're going to call the interface that we use failover, and we're going to use Ethernet 02. We're going to set exactly the same IP address that we did on the primary one. Don't worry, it won't conflict because one will be primary and one will be standby. Remember, .1 is our primary with a 24-bit mask. And .3 is standby. Remember, the key that we used was 666-999. Right, turn on failover and set this to the secondary. Now hopefully on the other screen, there we go, beginning configuration replication. Now I'm telnetted in here, so when failover actually establishes itself, what it'll do is it'll break both these telnet sessions. If you were consoled in, you would be able to see it copying the config across, detecting an active mate, etc., and setting itself up properly. But because I'm telnetted in, what it does is it breaks both the telnet sessions. And Hyperterminal is not clever enough to re-establish, so we have to manually disconnect, then reconnect. Let's have a look and see how failover is getting on. Okay, this is telling us that this unit is the primary one and it's active. The other secondary one is in standby and it's ready. I just hit the space bar, and because we're using stateful, there's all the stateful information there. Now, obviously the IP addresses have changed, so that one's not going to work. So just to demonstrate that this is working, I shall quickly drop to command line, start on CMD, and telnet into the second ASA. Now remember, the second ASA is going to be on the standby IP, which was on .252. To enable mode. So if you have a look at the running config, it's exactly the same because they're in active standby failover. So we'll just jump out of there And the show the failover command on here will show the status of this one, and this one tells us that this host is secondary and it's in standby, whereas the other host is primary and it's active. And once again, if I hit the space bar, there's all my stateful information. And those are your two firewalls in active standby.
What's that? It's a video of mosquito replacement for shit. No place to take your children. Engine was scraped along the floor on that Volvo. Actually, I bet it's been moved, I bet it's remounted.
Either that or turn the firewall.
And then there's well, I'll just put it at 77 Cisco 877 wireless router. It's got ADSL network, wireless networks. June 54, probably. I don't think we're going to line yet. It's only just been notified. 54 minutes. I mean, they're in the sort of 3 to 400 quid range. Then you don't need a router, you don't need a modem, and you don't need, but if you wanted to, yes, then you could put a 5505 in and buy a wireless hack. Sorry? Yes, yes. Well, I'm sure they could ask for service without one, because there's no point putting their voyage or whatever, where's their problems with those. It's just unformed, isn't it? So, I mean, ideally, you'd put a boat in and just do it at source, so you don't have to worry about filters. You can filter soccer ball. like 5 rate.
It was running your logic.
It was.
Neil, it's on the canister. Can you give me a 5 it's near 1915?
Type in IP COM4IG, something all there, and then we'll go back and it'll be something like local area connection. It's the IPv4 address. No worries, yeah.
Okay, this applied to 1920s. Is that one for Nick and one for
Nick and Peter.
Peter?
That's on the recent order deal that we have. Those ones just know that. Yeah. Yeah. That's bang on, that's correct, mate. But I'm not getting anything back from it.
I don't know. Use it once it's off.
Can you unconnect, unplug port 7 in the switch and plug it into one of the empty ones up to number 12? Yeah, you do that. I'll hang on. So it's the outlet that it's just on the switch itself. This isn't the cabinet yet. The HP Propel switch, the far left hand side of it is like the first block of 1 through 12. They're all for PCs. If you unplug number 7 which should be the fourth one from the left on the top. You just move it to one of the other numbers, and I'll try and contact it again.
That's right.
Okay, mate, that's come alive. I can see it now. Can you restart Louise's PC, mate, and see if you can get access to everything? Because I think something's happened on there, so I'll have to look at it next. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of, because they went to program them through, so yeah, it's 1 through 12 are meant to be for your PCs, and that.
We haven't invoiced the PCs we shipped this week off the main contract.
Hang on.
We've invoiced the
You
other
do our
contracts for
accounts
the new stuff
receivable
they ordered,
accounts.
which is put on a separate contract with those. Yeah.
It was money though.
So
You know
there's
that the file was worth more
2
than
mini
before.
towers, 4 PCs, 1 laptop, the office, the large printer and the monitors that went with those. That isn't included on that list, so you need to remember that you've had those as well. Because Kay can't invoice those until we get invoiced for them. We won't see the invoices yet. We will get invoiced in September because obviously we will ship in September, but she can't do that until the paperwork's in place this month. Alright, hopefully that will help. Alright, good stuff. Thanks for that, Alan. See you later. Bye.
Well, I guess I was wondering if that's a cleaning kit.
No, they're not working. I actually had to clean them last night because the lens fell out, so we had my grubby fingers all over it after I was
There you go. Oh, what a catch. Stand up for England.
well, Mr. Lang has ordered everything I've recommended, including an exorbitantly expensive rack kit.
Would I be right in thinking that the rack kit is coming off one of ours?
No?
Oh, he's got a new one.
Well, I've managed to source one. I don't want to mess with ours if we can avoid it. Particularly.
I think you've done well to refurbish it. Shall I go over it with the air duster?
Well, as soon as it goes in, it's coming in the warranty, so it doesn't.
And then I can place the support cord
As
to
it
replace
works.
the battery. It works. I ran it in the 380 and I booted the.
I'll let you wrap
I booted me rail.
But he's going to say he's going to work on it over the weekend and come back to me on Monday. The only snag is, you're going to pay delivery charges twice. If you're ordering 9 printers for delivery, per printer, no. Who's there? Who is the supplier? Well, you're just going to have to take what you do, aren't you? There's nothing to do about it. We're using their hands. Do we pass that on to them?